He used to be the arrogant and domineering Homelander, but now he's just a timid and compliant employee. When the boss reprimands him, he scurries over in a little jog. Even after being demoted, he still has to smile and follow orders. Even the newcomer Starlight dares to look down on him now. Today is a big day for Homelander. He wants to hear Starlight sing a birthday song for him, but just listen to how Starlight sings.
Happy birthday to you, happy birthday.
Even a fool could tell how perfunctory Starlight's singing is. And of course, so can Homelander. To make Starlight sing with more emotion, Homelander even arranged backup dancers for her. Just when Starlight was thinking about how to get rid of Homelander, a voice appeared in time to help Starlight out. The voice belonged, naturally, to Stan, the president of Vought International. He told Homelander, "Today may be your birthday banquet, but you and I both know that Starlight is the real star of the day. She can do whatever she wants." Homelander tried to argue, but Stan shut him down with the public approval ratings, leaving Homelander with no choice but to leave dejectedly. Homelander went to Stormfront's bedside, hoping to find some comfort.
It's my birthday, silly.
But after waiting for a long time, he didn't hear a single word of blessing, so he had to lower his expectations once again.
Just blink if you want to wish me a happy birthday.
But Stormfront remained unmoved. When had the once proud Homelander ever been so aggrieved? What happened next, however, completely transformed him. He went to the rooftop and happened to encounter a girl who wanted to jump. He hoped to persuade her with words, to make her choose life, but the girl refused to listen. As they were at an impasse, Homelander suddenly received an unexpected piece of news. The report said Stormfront had committed suicide on his birthday. Homelander couldn't believe it was true. Thinking of the days he had fought side by side with Stormfront made him even more sorrowful. The next words Homelander spoke seemed to be directed at the girl, but they were more like self-mockery. In fact, today isn't even Homelander's real birthday. Who would care about the birthday of someone created in a test tube? Today was just a date chosen by those in power for their own agenda. The more Homelander spoke, the more agitated and even somewhat deranged he became.
You give and you give, you give your whole life. And what happens? People just tear you down. Why do people destroy their gods?
He stopped trying to persuade the girl and instead told her to stick to her decision and jump.
Jump.
Oh, please, I just want to
Jump.
Oh God.
No. The only man in the sky is me.
With a loud crash, the girl fell and turned into a heap of flesh. It was from this moment that the timid and compliant employee transformed back into Homelander. He caressed the dried bloodstains, reflecting on his actions over the past period, and he would completely change at the birthday banquet. Homelander initially managed to tolerate Starlight stealing the limelight, but then someone else foolishly provoked him.
Homelander, you're not, she died!
Homelander didn't lose his temper on the spot, but his smile sent chills down everyone's spine. Starlight quickly tried to smooth things over, saying that Homelander was human too, and everyone makes mistakes. However, Homelander didn't appreciate her intervention. He started his inner monologue, seemingly addressing the audience but more likely speaking to himself, even though he knew this monologue would cost him everything.
I'm not just like the rest of you. I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better. I am better. You're not the real heroes. I'm the real hero.
So what? What did he have left to lose anyway? Homelander stares naked at the video of his speech, waiting for reality to set in, but he never expected the opposite. Ashley informed him that not only had his approval ratings not dropped, but they had reached a historic high. Everyone loved the combination of him and Starlight, with their popularity surpassing even Soldier Boy's, reaching an astonishing 98%. With this newfound success, Homelander became even more reckless. To prove to Starlight that he was still the leader of the Seven, he deliberately called over the Deep to test her reaction. Everyone knew that Starlight loathed the Deep after what he had done, and Homelander wanted to disgust her. The Deep, desperate to rejoin the team, had gone to great lengths, even preparing a gift for Starlight. But Starlight's trauma was still too fresh. She could never stand being in the same room as the Deep. So, Starlight threatened Homelander with exposing his crimes, urging him to reconsider his words. Unexpectedly, Homelander simply replied, "Do as you please," in a dismissive tone, because once he lost everything, he had nothing left to hold him back. At that point, he could easily wipe New York off the map and even threaten to destroy Starlight's hometown. Homelander's test was undeniably successful. Starlight, facing Homelander's unpredictability, finally understood what it meant to experience true fear from the depths of her soul. Seeing that Starlight was frightened, Homelander's behavior became increasingly outrageous. From this moment on, Homelander was completely transformed. Yet, his maliciousness didn't stop there. To celebrate the Deep's return, he hosted a seafood banquet. It is known that the Deep can communicate with all sea creatures, and eating seafood is like eating his own kind. Watching others devour the food, the Deep felt nauseated, but he dared not show his anger in front of the newly changed Homelander. However, the lobster was just an appetizer. The real main course of the day was yet to come. The octopus's name was Timothy, and he was the Deep's good friend. They had been chatting just the night before. The Deep said he couldn't bring himself to eat it. He kept pleading for Timothy's life, saying the octopus had children. At that moment, the Deep's wife sent him a text message, clearly indicating that the octopus was his ticket back into the Seven. Under the pressure from Homelander, the Deep had no choice but to eat Timothy. He put the entire octopus into his mouth, but the only thing he could do for his friend now was to avoid chewing. To lessen the pain, the Deep swallowed Timothy whole. Though the cost of rejoining the Seven was steep for the Deep, he achieved his goal and secured the last spot after Supersonic. But Homelander is up to no good again, and during the taping of the show, he openly stated that Starlight is his girlfriend. Starlight's mind went blank. She ran out, called Huey in tears, and said she wanted to quit VOD International. Huey told Starlight that no matter what, she had to keep up the act with Homelander, even if it cost her life. They were investigating a weapon that could kill Homelander, and Starlight needed to buy them time. Realizing she had no other options, Starlight clenched her fists and agreed to go along with Homelander's charade. Afterward, Starlight showed Huey the video. At first, Huey didn't understand why Starlight was doing this, but after hearing her explanation, he understood. As he said, at any cost, this was the cost. Huey held Starlight's hand tenderly, realizing she always sacrificed for him. This time, he wanted to protect her, but suddenly, Homelander appeared at the door, making Starlight and Huey tense up immediately.
By the way, you're a sound sleeper, Starlight.
Homelander opens his mouth with a bomb. He signed Huey's cast while verbally testing his limits, saying that he and Queen Maeve started their relationship similarly and that Queen Maeve could pleasure him without using her hands.
What's she like? She good f***?
Homelander's words made Huey lose his temper, ready to explode.
Touch him or anyone he cares about, and I'll walk. And I'll take my approval points with me.
Seeing this, Homelander backed off, not wanting to waste the publicity Starlight brought him. This incident made Starlight understand one thing: constantly giving in would only make Homelander more audacious. She knew she had to take action. So, Starlight approached Queen Maeve and asked if she had heard of a weapon called BCL Red. Queen Maeve had, as she was the one who leaked the information to the boys. For the past 4 months, she had been rigorously training in combat, waiting for the boys to find BCL Red to take down Homelander once and for all. But they couldn't do it alone. They needed more allies. Starlight started recruiting Supersonic. Unexpectedly, Supersonic agreed without hesitation and even supported Starlight during the meeting. Good news kept coming. A-Train proposed removing Blue Hawk from his position, citing his excessive patrolling in black communities. Before Homelander could respond, the Deep opposed the idea. He argued that the Seven was already short-staffed and should not agree with A-Train's proposal, seizing the opportunity to flatter Homelander. After the meeting, A-Train immediately confronted the Deep, berating him for meddling and expressing disgust at his bootlicking. The Deep wasn't afraid of him and retorted sharply. When neither could win the argument, they started fighting. A-Train punched the Deep right in the gills, his most vulnerable spot. The Deep retaliated by slamming A-Train against the wall. The commotion caught Homelander's attention. Homelander pulled up the Deep, ignoring A-Train and throwing in some taunts. Seeing the Deep act all high and mighty infuriated A-Train, but luckily Supersonic held him back just in time. He couldn't understand how he lost favor with Homelander after all he had done for him just because of one loss. His words gave Supersonic an opening to recruit him. It seemed that the scales of victory were tipping in Starlight's favor. Starlight informed Stan that Homelander had subtly mocked him on the show, which deeply angered Stan. Stan decided it was time to put Homelander in his place and remind him who was really in charge of VOD International. When the news reached Homelander, he immediately realized the gravity of the situation. The press conference proceeded as scheduled, with Starlight's team eagerly awaiting this moment. But, unexpectedly, What was supposed to be a denunciation of Homelander's misdeeds turned into a praise fest for him, even putting Stan in the hot seat. Stan slowly removed his glasses, realizing his era was coming to an end. This news was a heavy blow to Starlight, leaving everyone shocked except for Homelander, who wore a sinister smile. Afterward, Homelander approached Victoria, bringing her two things as rewards. One was evidence of her crimes. The other was the latest batch of Compound V. His aim was to turn Victoria to his side. Homelander's strength lay not only in his superpowers but also in his cunning strategies. Homelander is no longer the one who has to trot around when he's being lectured, and he's desperate to see Stan lose his temper. Unfortunately for him, Stan saw Homelander as nothing more than a son seeking his father's approval.
You are not worthy of my respect. You are not a god. You are simply bad product.
Homelander's ego took another hit, so he sought to reclaim his pride by taking it out on others. Starlight became his target for venting. Under the cameras, Starlight couldn't openly resist. Homelander took Starlight to a rooftop. There, besides the cityscape, she saw a sight she would never forget. It was a mutilated corpse, identifiable only by the superhero costume. Poor Supersonic hadn't even displayed his powers before becoming another victim of Homelander.
A-Train told me about you two mutineers and your little plot.
Starlight never imagined A-Train would betray them. This was Homelander's warning to Starlight. Starlight realized all her resistance seemed futile against Homelander. Her only hope now rested with the boys. But things weren't looking good for the boys either. Billy's behavior towards Ryan has caused Kimiko to become so disgruntled that she wants to go away with Frenchie. Before Frenchie could respond, Billy returned. Billy demanded to know where Frenchie had been, and Frenchie said he almost died at Little Nina's hands. Upon hearing this name, Billy saw a potential breakthrough and instructed Frenchie to arrange a meeting with Little Nina. It turns out that Little Nina is the underground queen of Russia, and she is certainly familiar with BCL Red. Of course, Little Nina is straightforward. She promises Billy that if he eliminates her arch-nemesis in Russia, she will reveal the location of BCL Red. However, Frenchie doesn't believe Little Nina is so kind-hearted and absolutely refuses to take the job. Billy never intended for Frenchie to take on the task. To get information on BCL Red, he wants Kimiko to seduce and kill the local mob boss, Oligarch. Kimiko angrily pulls out her phone, indicating she is not his tool for murder. In the end, the arm cannot twist the thigh. Kimiko reluctantly dons a glamorous evening dress, disguising herself as a dancer to infiltrate the mob, but she barely takes a few steps. Clearly, wearing high heels is much harder than assassinating a mob boss. Luckily, the security guards at the gate didn't notice Kimiko's little mistake and just confirmed Kimiko's identity. Kimiko quickly employs her charms and successfully sneaks into Oligarch's room. Oligarch, unaware of his impending doom, enthusiastically introduces his secret weapons to Kimiko. Even letting her choose one, Kimiko doesn't disappoint him. With a snap, Oligarch's head is instantly pierced by one of his secret weapons, leaving a fist-sized hole. Next, it's Kimiko's hunting time. She kicks off her high heels, swiftly maneuvering to the guard at the door, and thrusts the weapon into his head. Then Kimiko picked up another weapon and swiftly knocked the man's gun out of his hands. The man drew a small dagger, ready to square off against Kimiko. To his credit, the man was quite skilled, and after a few rounds, he managed to disarm Kimiko. Kimiko quickly grabbed two decorations from the wall, started attacking the man, then straddled him. Another unlucky fellow rushes in, only to have Kimiko stab a light bulb through his throat. Now, only women are left breathing in the room. Kimiko quickly takes out her phone to photograph the evidence, but then, a gunshot rings out, and a bullet hits Kimiko squarely in the forehead. Kimiko couldn't believe that her killer was the dancer she had just saved. The dancer trembled uncontrollably, just wanting to send away the demon before her. However, even death shied away from Kimiko. The bullet slowly slid out of her forehead, and she came back to life. The dancers panicked even more, quickly dropping the gun and begging for mercy. Kimiko waved her hand, indicating she wasn't a bad person, but looking down at her blood-soaked self, any explanation was futile. She didn't know when this kind of life would ever end. Kimiko angrily threw her phone at Billy. Kimiko didn't want to talk to him. She lay on the couch, reflecting on the day's events, no longer wanting to be seen as a monster. Kimiko told Frenchie that she didn't blame those girls because they, like her, were mere commodities bought and sold. Whether it's Billy or Little Nina, they're all the same. They don't see them as human. Kimiko wants Frenchie to leave with her. Frenchie knew Billy was a bastard, but Huey and him still needed them. He promised that after this mission, he would take her far away. Frenchie couldn't bear to see Kimiko so disappointed. Kimiko hugged Frenchie, excitedly dreaming about the near future, but was Billy really the bastard they said he was? Even M, who had been with him the longest, couldn't stand it and asked Billy why he had changed so much. Billy didn't answer directly, instead explaining why he recruited him. If him were just a lowly Marine, Billy wouldn't have looked at him twice. What he valued was him's cohesion. Billy had his reasons too. Picking up the butcher's knife meant he couldn't embrace his teammates, but putting it down meant he couldn't protect them. So, he had to be the villain, to be safe. Billy injected himself with V24, turning into the very kind of superhuman he despised. But then Huey burst in. Immediately noticing what Billy had done, Billy expected Huey to start yelling at him, but instead, Huey surprisingly said he wanted superpowers too. He didn't want to be the coward hiding behind Starlight, being a useless pushover. No matter how Huey pleaded, Billy refused. In Billy's view, this is not power at all but a punishment. It's best if he alone bears this punishment. Billy didn't answer directly, only saying, "Get ready to move out." But when they arrived, they realized they had been deceived. This place was not a lab. It was clearly a military base. Billy didn't care whether it was a base or not. He was ready to fight. They cut the power, infiltrated the base, and took down the guards. But the problem was that finding a specific weapon in this vast armory was no easy task. They searched for a long time but found nothing unusual, except for a strange metal gun. While they were puzzled, Frenchie's attention was drawn to a glass cage containing a small golden hamster. M looked at Frenchie and urged him to stop playing around and focus on finding the weapon, but Frenchie ignored him and tapped on the glass. The hamster, startled, suddenly became extremely aggressive and quickly cracked the glass. The noise triggered the alarm system, and they prepared for a fight. An armed squad burst in and started shooting. Billy quickly kicked over a lab table to block the bullets and killed a few soldiers. Kimiko lunged at the lead soldier and snapped his neck in one move. Killing was easy for Kimiko, but she didn't like this part of herself. Frenchie faced the same dilemma, to kill or not to kill. Luckily, he didn't have to decide, as the hamster made the choice for him. In an instant, the hamster drilled into the soldier's head. The soldier let out a painful scream before quickly falling silent. But wasn't as lucky. Billy glanced at the gun in his hand, made a decision, and looked at Huey, who nodded in agreement. Billy gave a wicked smile. At first, thought Billy was going to get himself killed, but he was wrong. With his superpowers, Billy was like an impenetrable fortress. A flash of gold, and the soldiers were instantly torn apart. Another soldier met a swift death. Barely realizing what happened, they thought the trouble was over, but there was another soldier behind him. Huey disappeared at the same time he reminded M, and in the next second he appeared behind the soldier naked, and then he punched through the soldier's body, using his powers for the first time. Huey was as happy as a child, not noticing his nudity. Although Huey's powers were a bit embarrassing, they were better than being humiliated. Kimiko asks them in sign language why they're turning themselves into monsters. Billy explained it was just a precaution, and the effects only lasted 24 hours. But now wasn't the time for blame. Finding the secret weapon was crucial. Billy pried open the metal door. To Billy's surprise, the so-called secret weapon wasn't a weapon but a living person. Upon closer inspection, it was Soldier Boy. Soldier Boy slowly stepped out of the cryo chamber, turned to face Frenchie, his chest glowing red, causing the ground to tremble. Sensing danger, Kimiko rushed to push Frenchie aside but couldn't avoid the strange energy. Realizing they were no match for Soldier Boy, they watched helplessly as he walked away. Frenchie hurried to check on Kimiko's injuries. Thankfully, she was only impaled by a metal rod, which she usually healed from quickly, but this time, Kimiko's wounds showed no signs of healing. Despite M's medical skills, he was at a loss. He instructed Frenchie to keep Kimiko awake at all costs. While and Frenchie were worried, the other two behaved insensitively. Huey was lost in his own world. Billy was only concerned with Soldier Boy's powers. M couldn't understand how having superpowers could make them disregard their teammates' lives. Fortunately, Kimiko eventually stabilized. Seeing her wounds not healing, she suddenly smiled. She asked Frenchie to bring her something heavy. After several attempts, she couldn't lift it. Confirming her suspicion, she was finally an ordinary person again, no longer a monster in anyone's eyes. Elated, Kimiko spent her days with Frenchie, listening to her favorite operas, but as she listened, she suddenly sensed something.
Random.
Frenchie is more excited than she is. Kimiko touched her throat and began singing her favorite song, moving from the ward to the corridor, and from the corridor to the cafeteria. Eventually, everyone in the hospital was dancing to her song. Every day, Soldier Boy wakes up to a barrage of bullets, followed by having his throat seared shut with a welding torch. His body may be invincible, but the terrifying part is that even his corneas are layered with defense. If you're not careful, he'll kill you back. It seems that only this white smoke can put him into a brief coma. For 40 years, he was used as a guinea pig by the Russians in human experiments, until Billy accidentally released him. But no one would have guessed that these experiments not only left no marks on Soldier Boy but also allowed him to master a new move. He could now concentrate his power in his chest to unleash a nuclear blast. This blast not only has terrifying destructive power but can also turn superhumans into ordinary people. He is essentially a walking nuclear weapon. He thought the name Soldier Boy would be remembered forever, but he discovered he had been replaced by a bunch of nobodies. Now he is a homeless man with nothing. He silently vows to kill everyone who betrayed him. At this moment, Soldier Boy hears a familiar tune, and painful memories flood his mind, causing him to lose control instantly. The pebbles on the ground begin to tremble, and with a roar, Soldier Boy's powers erupt uncontrollably. By the time Billy arrives, Soldier Boy is long gone, leaving behind only ruins and a field of corpses. Instruments detect that the area is severely contaminated with nuclear radiation. If Soldier Boy is left unchecked, the entire country could suffer. But the problem is, how to find Soldier Boy has become their biggest challenge. Just then, arrives in a hurry, giving Billy a glimmer of hope. With M's knowledge of Soldier Boy, finding him is just a matter of time. Billy proposes they work together, but doesn't want to deal with this selfish bastard. Billy quickly stops and promises that once they find Soldier Boy, he and Huey will help him get his revenge, and then they will part ways for good. Although he manages to temporarily convince Billy knows full well that the three of them, as ordinary humans, trying to kill Soldier Boy is a pipe dream. As he's at his wit's end, Queen Maeve brings him a batch of V24, and Billy is overjoyed. In the past, it would take him at least 5 months to kill a superhuman, but with this stuff, it didn't even take a second to kill gunpowder. Queen Maeve thought Billy would be obsessed with the feeling of the V24 injection, but Billy's answer was unexpected. He hates every second after injecting it. Superpowers expose his true nature and make him more like that bastard himself. In his view, all superhumans are just walking nuclear devices. It's not just Homelander. Every superhuman should disappear. To his surprise, instead of getting angry, Queen Maeve kisses him. They naturally spend a wonderful night together, but this night of passion puts Queen Maeve in trouble. Homelander asks Queen Maeve if she's turned traitor because he smells Billy on her. Queen Maeve hurriedly tries to cover it up, but Homelander isn't buying it and has Black Noir kidnap her. Of course, Billy is unaware of this. At this point, they have already found the legend under M's guidance. The legend is the former head of Vought International's superhero management. Soldier Boy took his suit from him and also asked for Crimson Countess's address. Billy questions why Soldier Boy is looking for her. The legend explains that they used to be in a relationship, but he doubts this will be a happy reunion. They need to find Crimson Countess before Soldier Boy does. To be safe, Billy plans to have them inject V24 in advance. M is the first to refuse. He doesn't want to become a monster without boundaries. Billy doesn't force him, respecting each person's choice. That night, they arrive at Crimson Countess's residence. Billy suddenly springs out, subduing Crimson Countess and binding her hands with tape to prevent her from using her powers. Billy bluntly tells her that Soldier Boy is alive and coming for her. Crimson Countess panics upon hearing this and asks how Soldier Boy escaped from Russia. Her reaction makes it clear that she had a hand in his capture. Billy doesn't press for details, as Crimson Countess is merely bait for Soldier Boy. Now they just need to wait patiently. But unexpectedly, Starlight arrives first instead of Soldier Boy. It turns out had a backup plan and informed Starlight of their actions. Starlight can't understand why Huey didn't tell her himself. Huey doesn't bother to explain. He simply teleports. He no longer wants to be the coward hiding behind Starlight. This time, he wants to protect her.
I don't need you to save me, Huey. I need you.
However, Starlight's words leave Huey in silence. Just then, the radiation detector alarms, indicating Soldier Boy's approach. Tries to get up but finds himself weak and unable to move. He looks at the water bottle Billy gave him earlier and realizes everything. He demands to know why Billy did this. It turns out Billy never planned to kill Soldier Boy but instead wants to team up with him against Homelander. Crimson Countess is his peace offering to Soldier Boy. Soldier Boy asked Crimson Countess why she betrayed him and what the Russians were offering her, but Crimson Countess tells him she received nothing, she just wanted him dead. Her words not only infuriate Soldier Boy but also seal her fate. Soldier Boy's chest begins to glow brighter and brighter. With a loud explosion, a powerful shockwave hits. By the time Huey reaches the scene, it's already a wasteland. Soldier Boy slowly emerges from the rubble. Starlight immediately prepares for battle, but to her surprise, Huey steps in front of her.
We wanted a weapon. Soldier Boy's our weapon. He's how we kill Homelander and Newman, maybe.
This is the only way he can think of to save Starlight from Homelander. They begin to brainwash Soldier Boy, promising not only to help him adapt to the current era but also to find other members of the payback team. The condition is to add Homelander to his revenge list, but Soldier Boy isn't buying it. Huey has a sudden inspiration.
Do you know what a GPS is? Or Bluetooth? The internet?
Soldier Boy finally agrees to cooperate with them. Billy is responsible for finding the TNT twins. Huey helps Soldier Boy get acquainted with the current era. Huey asks why he destroyed that building when there was no one there he wanted revenge on. Soldier Boy says he blacked out for 10 minutes, and when he woke up, the tragedy had already happened. He didn't mean to harm any innocents. Just then, Billy returns and says the people Soldier Boy is looking for are in Vermont. After that, he and Huey inject V-24 again. A superhuman razing an entire building to the ground has thrust Homelander into the spotlight. Though he has immense powers, he is terrible at managing crises. To keep his subordinates from noticing, he quickly reassures everyone that there's no need to worry. Everything is under control, and says that Starlight can handle such a minor issue. But when Starlight arrives at the crime analysis department, she's dumbfounded. It turns out that the Deep, trying to curry favor with Homelander, has fired everyone who ever disrespected him.
We are everyone. Deep fired most of the department.
With the superhumans still at large, Homelander has to take matters into his own hands. After countless attempts, the Deep was able to pull up the surveillance video, but when Homelander sees the face in the video, he loses his composure and looks to Black Noir for help. Black Noir signals, "Don't look at me, I'm scared too." Everyone knows that Soldier Boy is the hero among heroes. Before Homelander, he was the embodiment of Vought. If the public finds out that Soldier Boy not only bombed Manhattan but also killed Crimson Countess, both Homelander and the company are doomed. He can't understand how all this trouble keeps landing in his lap. The only solace is that Black Noir is there to help him through this crisis. To everyone's surprise, no sooner had Homelander left than Black Noir dug out the tracking chip from his arm, handed it to a nearby woman, and made a swift escape. When Homelander learns that Black Noir has fled, he's even more terrified. Losing all his usual arrogance, the Deep believes that Crimson Countess's death is just the beginning. It's clear that Soldier Boy intends to take out the entire payback team, which includes Black Noir. The good news is they've identified Soldier Boy's next target, the TNT twins in Vermont. Homelander orders the Deep to go there and report back immediately if he finds anything. The Deep doesn't delay and sets off at once, but upon arrival, he discovers the annual Harrigasm party is in full swing. He promptly forgets all about Homelander's mission. Starlight and Imum arrive shortly after. Soldier Boy, Billy, and the others are also outside the party, ready to make their move. A chaotic battle is about to unfold. Huey, worried that Soldier Boy might harm innocents, suggests evacuating the crowd first. He then teleports away. Starlight tries to persuade everyone to leave, but they don't believe that Soldier Boy is alive. Suddenly, Starlight hears a familiar voice. It's the Deep, engaged in some dubious activity with an octopus. The Deep claims the octopus is sick. Clearly, Starlight doesn't buy his story. She takes pictures for evidence, planning to show Homelander. The Deep has no choice but to admit that Homelander sent him. Huey accidentally bumps into A-Train, and with his superpowers, he's ready to fight him. Huey demands that A-Train apologize for Robin's death. To his surprise, A-Train readily agrees and seems genuinely sincere. Since Blue Hawk crippled A-Train's brother, he has understood Huey's pain. He's here to get revenge on Blue Hawk. But Huey is still not relenting and goes up to A-Train and punches him. Starlight quickly pulls Huey away and tells him that Homelander is on his way. She urges them not to cause trouble now, but it's too late. Soldier Boy has arrived. Starlight tries to stop him, but Huey grabs her from behind and teleports her to the outskirts. While they argue, unexpectedly encounters Soldier Boy. With a vendetta to settle, throws a fluorine grenade at him. The concentration is enough to knock out an elephant. To Imum's shock, Soldier Boy picks up the grenade and inhales deeply. M is stunned. Is this guy even human? M knew that he was going to die today, but so what? It's better to die standing up than being a turtle. Luckily, Billy appears in time and tells Soldier Boy that the people he's looking for are inside. Billy then stood in front of him. He couldn't stand by and watch him die. Soldier Boy finds the TNT twins and demands to know why they betrayed him. The TNT twins blame Black Noir, claiming it was his idea. Soldier Boy doesn't believe them. Black Noir is just a puppet of Vought, and without Vaught's orders, he wouldn't dare make a move. As Soldier Boy prepares to press them further, he hears familiar music, triggering painful memories. He begins to lose control. The TNT twins, seeing the situation, decided to strike first. However, they were shocked to find that their superpowers were completely ineffective against Soldier Boy. Soldier Boy unleashed his big move again, and the violent nuclear energy instantly swept through the whole party scene, killing everyone in its path. In no time, the place becomes a hell on Earth. With few survivors, the Deep is the first to escape, carrying the sick octopus, ready to inform Homelander. A-Train also found Blue Hawk and was ready to avenge his brother's death. He knocked him down with a single move and then grabbed him by the back of the leg and ran away at great speed. No matter how strong Blue Hawk is, he can't withstand this and gradually becomes a bloody mess. A-Train keeps accelerating until his own heart can't take it, and he collapses. By then, Blue Hawk is just a pile of flesh, and A-Train lies on the ground. Heart stopped. Billy wakes up and checks him's pulse, relieved to find him alive. He looked up at the man who had started it all.
What happened?
When Homelander received the news, instead of rushing to the scene, he stood in front of the mirror and gave himself a pep talk. Arrogant, cold-blooded, hypocritical, and violent, these are all synonymous with Homelander. But who has seen the lonely, weak, helpless, and insecure man behind the mirror? Despite being at the top of the food chain, this time, he was truly afraid. Afraid that without Stan, Vought International would be doomed. Afraid that without Black Noir, he was no match for Soldier Boy. Afraid of being exposed as nothing more than a hollow fraud.
Want them to love me.
Yes, Homelander's greatest weakness is that he retains a shred of humanity. This humanity stems from a flawed need to be loved, something he never had and never deserved. Though terrified inside, when facing the cameras, he still put on a confident facade, claiming he would handle everything, for he still needed the public's adoration. But even this last bit of adoration would soon be completely erased in Vermont. The party scene had turned into ruins, and the culprits were the two men before him. Seeing Billy team up with Soldier Boy infuriated him. They were supposed to cut all ties and have a final showdown. Billy's actions were clearly cheating.
Deal's off.
After dealing with Billy, it was time for a one-on-one duel with Soldier Boy. Homelander suddenly lunged, pinning Soldier Boy against the wall. Just as he was about to use his laser eyes, Soldier Boy punched him, diverting the beam. With his laser eyes rendered useless, he resorted to close combat. As they fought, woke up. He pulled out a gun, ready to join the fray, but charging in like that would be suicidal. Fortunately, Starlight stopped him in time, saying there were wounded outside needing his help. Restrained his impulse. The brawl continued, with Homelander gaining a slight edge. He kicked Soldier Boy away and grabbed him by the throat. Just as Homelander was about to deliver a fatal blow, Billy suddenly intervened. Seizing Homelander's moment of hesitation, he fired a golden beam, blasting Homelander away. Homelander was filled with questions. Another round of close combat ensued. They fought fiercely, with neither gaining the upper hand. Billy grabbed Homelander by the throat. Homelander, unwilling to yield, tightly gripped Billy's incoming fist. Unexpectedly, Billy unleashed his laser eyes in a sneak attack. Homelander soared into the air, and both their eyes emitted lasers, engaging in an intense beam struggle. But how could Billy's borrowed powers match Homelander's? He gradually showed signs of fatigue. At that moment, Soldier Boy suddenly intervened, throwing Homelander across the room and slamming him into the wall. Billy immediately followed, joining the fight. Homelander couldn't believe that these two shamelessly ganged up on him 2 against 1. Homelander wasn't backing down either. He landed a right hook on Soldier Boy, sending him flying, and then seized the opportunity to grab Billy by the throat. While they were in a stalemate, Huey suddenly came over and helped Billy get out of the hold. An enraged Homelander quickly turned his focus to Huey, determined to kill him first. But the kid was too nimble, dodging his attacks with ease. Seizing Homelander's distraction, Soldier Boy slammed him to the ground. It took all three of them to barely restrain Homelander. Soldier Boy knew he couldn't waste any time and immediately prepared to strip Homelander of his powers. Just as he were about to unleash their finishing move, Homelander let out an enraged roar, broke free from their hold, and shot into the sky, disappearing from their sight in an instant. Billy, surprisingly, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. He wasn't afraid to die. He was afraid Huey would die with him. The three walked out of the ruins, and Billy glanced at him, tending to the wounded, his eyes filled with guilt. Huey looked at Starlight. What they were about to do would never be understood by others. Perhaps parting ways was the best outcome. Afterward, Starlight looked at the corpses strewn about and made a bold decision. Turning her into America's sweetheart was undoubtedly Homelander's biggest mistake. Through a live broadcast to her 190 million followers, Starlight exposed the truth about the incident. The truth was that there had never been any super demons. The so-called superheroes they worshipped were the true culprits of this tragedy. Be it Soldier Boy or Homelander, they were all criminals wreaking havoc on the country. She also announced her resignation from Vought International.
My name is Annie January, and I quit.
Starlight's influence was a lethal blow to Homelander. He stood in front of the mirror, his hair turning white overnight. To prevent the situation from escalating further, he visited the confinement room to extract information about Soldier Boy's whereabouts from Queen Maeve. To his surprise, not only did he fail to get any information, but Queen Maeve also noticed the concealed wounds covered by his makeup. Homelander quickly changed the subject, saying that Soldier Boy not only killed Crimson Countess and 7 other superheroes but also stripped the surviving superheroes of their powers. If they didn't deal with Soldier Boy soon, both he and Queen Maeve could become ordinary people. Unexpectedly, Queen Maeve listens to this and is filled with disinterest. She longs to become normal herself. She was also puzzled why Homelander, who could have killed her, chose to keep her alive. Homelander didn't hide his intentions. He wanted to use Queen Maeve's genes to create a child with him, to whom he would give all the love he never had. Queen Maeve just laughed at him. Homelander didn't want to argue with her. He had more pressing matters to handle. 5 days had passed since Starlight exposed Vought International's scandals, yet Homelander still hadn't found any trace of Soldier Boy. It was as if Soldier Boy had never appeared. But Homelander knew someone must have hidden him, and he was right. The person Homelander suspected was the Legend.
What are you watching?
Old mistakes.
Huey was puzzled by the Legend's response. Wasn't Soldier Boy a hero of the Normandy invasion? The Legend said Soldier Boy did go to Normandy, but only after the battle was over to shoot a propaganda film. But what did it matter? The public needed a hero to worship. So he covered up Soldier Boy's dirtiest deeds and crafted a mythical hero. And this so-called hero was currently in the bedroom, busy with an older woman, claiming that women only get more charming with age. He once led Payback, charging into the front lines, only to be betrayed by his teammates and abandoned by his country. Recalling his past glories always filled Soldier Boy with indignation. There was a woman he deeply loved. He always kept his composure and never killed the innocent. Billy looked at Soldier Boy and suddenly understood everything.
What happened?
This guy had severe PTSD. To ensure they could capture Mindstorm successfully, Billy had to use marijuana to calm Soldier Boy and asked what precautions they should take. Soldier Boy nonchalantly said that as long as they didn't make eye contact, there was nothing to worry about. But Billy clearly didn't trust this hypocritical guy. To be safe, he and Huey injected V24. However, this substance was a double-edged sword, granting them superpowers but also causing severe side effects. Billy's ears often bled black blood, but before he could think more about it, Soldier Boy triggered a trap. A loud explosion followed, and the three of them were instantly blown away. Had they not taken V24, Huey and Billy would have been reduced to pieces. At that moment, a figure suddenly emerged from the smoke, and his pupils dilated instantly. Billy sensed danger and quickly closed his eyes, but it was too late. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself in a different space. There, he saw his young mother, his childhood self, and his brother Lenny. In his daze, he even saw a shadow of Huey and his brother. Just as he was puzzled, he heard the bastard's father shout again. Billy struck out, but his hand went right through him. Billy then realized that this was not a real space but Mindstorm's illusion. In the real world, Billy had already fallen into a coma. Soldier Boy told Huey not to waste his efforts. Once trapped in Mindstorm's endless dream, there was only waiting for death. Only Mindstorm could wake him up. but Soldier Boy would kill him the first chance he got to avoid being controlled himself. No matter how much Huey begged, it was all in vain. Soldier Boy warned Huey to keep moving, or he wouldn't mind adding another kill to his tally. Huey had no choice but to agree, though he clearly had his own ideas. He deliberately placed his backpack under Billy's head before leaving. As they walked, Soldier Boy suddenly stopped, evidently experiencing auditory hallucinations from the marijuana. To break the awkward silence, Soldier Boy began recounting his glorious exploits. Huey gave a derisive laugh, telling him to cut the crap. Surprisingly, Soldier Boy was quite even-tempered, never retaliating even when Huey called him out to his face. And so, they cheerfully walked out of the forest. On the way, they encountered a priest and a nun whose car seemed to have broken down. Being the helpful person he was, Soldier Boy immediately checked their engine. Then, after killing the priest, Soldier Boy shamelessly declared, "Ha, it must be one of Mindstorm's tricks trying to fool me." As Huey tried to persuade him to spare the nun, she went berserk and bit Huey on the neck. Well, maybe Soldier Boy was right this time. Naturally, the nun met the same fatal fate. After a harrowing journey, they arrived at Mindstorm's lair, and even Soldier Boy grew nervous. Cautiously searching, Soldier Boy finally saw Mindstorm's reflection in a mirror. Just as Soldier Boy prepared to attack, he suddenly realized Huey was gone. When he turned back, Mindstorm had already been teleported by Huey, who appeared beside Billy in the blink of an eye. Huey struck a deal with Mindstorm, promising to use his powers to help him evade Soldier Boy's pursuit if he woke Billy up. To his surprise, Mindstorm flatly refused, saying he had just glimpsed Billy's mind and that the guy was a jerk not worth saving. It turned out that when Billy and his brother Lenny were kids, they were often abused by their father. Billy always stepped up to protect Lenny, but over time, Billy unknowingly started to become more like his father. Once, when Billy went to a lawyer to sue his father, he suddenly seemed possessed by his father's spirit and viciously attacked the lawyer. Lenny noticed his erratic behavior and tried to stop him, only to be knocked to the ground by Billy. This incident made Billy realize the severity of the problem. If he stayed with his father, he would become a complete monster. Finally, one day, Billy decided to leave home, no matter how much Lenny begged him to stay. I think that might have been the worst decision Billy ever made. 6 months later, Lenny couldn't take their father's abuse anymore. With the sound of a gunshot, Billy finally woke up. Mindstorm reminded Huey it was time to leave, and Huey had no intention of breaking his word. But just then, a flying knife suddenly pierced Mindstorm's right eye. It was Soldier Boy. He knocked Mindstorm down, put a hood over his head, and punched him in the face. When Huey tried to stop him, Soldier Boy punched him away without any hesitation. Seeing his brother getting hurt enraged Billy. Luckily, Soldier Boy didn't want to continue the fight, so they didn't clash further. Soldier Boy continued to interrogate Mindstorm, asking why Vought had abandoned him. And then, he learned a shocking secret. Homelander recently encountered trouble. He thought that after kicking Stan out, he would have full control, but instead, Soldier Boy left him battered and bruised. To make matters worse, his teammates were leaving him one by one. First, Queen Maeve teamed up with Billy. Then, Black Noir left him too. A-Train's fate was uncertain. The Deep spent all his time thinking about how to seduce Fish. The biggest problem for him was Starlight, who exposed the Vought International scandal in front of 190 million fans. To quell the situation, Homelander gave a public speech, calling Starlight a wolf in sheep's clothing who had deceived everyone. However, just as he was fervently speaking, his expression froze. Soldier Boy had somehow appeared in the crowd. Instinctively, Homelander stepped back. Just as he was about to activate his laser eyes, Soldier Boy vanished. It was a hallucination caused by Homelander's immense stress. Moments ago, Homelander had been speaking confidently, but now he was incoherent. He briefly interacted with the audience before hastily fleeing. At the ranch, Homelander panted heavily, his mind full of woes with no one to confide in. Suddenly, he thought of a way to relieve his stress and headed to the barn. As he milked the cow, he became increasingly relaxed, eventually finding the experience enjoyable. Awkwardly, Homelander explained, "The cow was in pain. I just wanted to help relieve it." Victoria not only exposed his lie on the spot but also firmly accused Homelander of being afraid of Soldier Boy. Otherwise, how could he have forgotten to help her campaign for the presidency? Humiliated, Homelander suddenly grabbed Victoria by the throat. Terrified, Victoria quickly pulled out a note. Homelander released her after reading its contents. The note had Ryan's address. Homelander immediately ordered Ashley to investigate. Before he could hang up, another call came through. To his surprise, it was Soldier Boy. Homelander thinks he's here to pick a fight, and bluffs that he lost to him yesterday in a moment of carelessness. Soldier Boy didn't argue with him, and talked about the information he got from Mindstorm. In the fall of 1980, he was subjected to a secret genetic experiment, during which he deposited his sperm into a cup. Jonah then used it to create a test tube baby, a boy born in the spring of 1981. Homelander, who had always longed for love, finally found his father. If he could reunite with his son, they could be a 3-generation family. Homelander eagerly approached his son, but Ryan instinctively stepped back upon seeing him, warmly calling Grace Aunt. Homelander felt a pang of sadness, realizing he meant less to his son than someone with no blood relation. Grace was about to call for backup, but Homelander's keen ears caught her. She complied with his demand to regain his son's trust. Homelander told him he was his true family. His mother's death wasn't his fault. Powerful people sometimes make mistakes. No one understood him better. Ryan had waited too long to hear those words. He finally let go of his resentment and hugged Homelander tightly. Despite the good news, there was always an exception. Starlight supporters gathered at Vought International, demanding Queen Maeve's release and even drawing the attention of the Justice Department. Meanwhile, Homelander supporters slandered Starlight and clashed with her followers. Under pressure, Ashley decided to transfer Queen Maeve. As the room filled with fluorine, Queen Maeve fell into a coma, but during the transfer, Queen Maeve woke up. As the anesthetist tried to increase the dosage, she fought back. After a series of screams, Queen Maeve was the only one left breathing in the car. Her escape was terrible news for Ashley. The good news was that A-Train woke up. She transplanted Blue Hawk's heart into A-Train and placed all the blame on Soldier Boy. Afterward, Ashley brought the Deep to face the consequences. Ashley relayed both the good and bad news to Homelander, who immediately flew into a rage upon hearing it. Just then, Black Noir suddenly appeared at the door, giving Ashley and the Deep a chance to slip away. Black Noir handed Homelander a note that read, "Soldier Boy is coming. We killed him." Why was Black Noir no longer afraid of Soldier Boy? Where had he been all this time?